Why does the name of Jesus still resonate so powerfully today, no matter where we are in the world? What lies behind this figure that transcends religious, cultural, and even scientific boundaries? The answer may not lie in temples, liturgies, or dogmas, but rather in the invisible field of reality, a space where science and spirituality intertwine. Many have heard of Christ only as a religious title, but few have considered the possibility that it represents a universal consciousness, a frequency of reality that vibrates beyond time and not just a man of flesh and bone. What quantum physics has begun to reveal in recent years is that there is something much deeper behind the idea of the Word made flesh. And when we look at this figure with the eyes of expanded consciousness, something changes. Everything changes. For centuries, Christ has been institutionalized, boxed into dogmas and beliefs that served more to control than to liberate. But in the subtext of ancient texts, and in the forgotten corners of history, a vibrant and living truth pulses. Christ was never just a man, but rather a state of being, a gateway to a higher reality. The term Christ comes from the Greek Christos, which means anointed. But when we delve beyond the etymology, we realize that it represents an activation, an ignition of the divine within the human being. It is no coincidence that Jesus stated so clearly, "Ye are gods," a statement that, if understood in its entirety, could crumble millennia-old power structures. Modern science is beginning to confirm what mystics and masters have been saying for millennia. Reality is energy, vibration, and information, and this energy responds to consciousness. So, if everything is energy, and this energy can be shaped by intention, could it be possible that Christ's teachings were not just spiritual, but also instructions on how to interact with the very matrix of the universe? Jesus did not teach theories. He lived demonstrations. He transformed water into wine, healed with a word, calmed storms with his presence. What seemed like miracles today begins to be understood as direct interference in the quantum field. What he did, he himself said that others could also do, and even more. This is not a metaphor. It is an invitation. The historical figure of Jesus is just the surface. Behind it, there is the eternal Christ, the living archetype of an awakened consciousness that transcends religions and eras. When we refer to the quantum Christ, we are not talking about a new dogma, but a rediscovery, a truth that was never hidden, only forgotten. Eastern spirituality already understands this in figures such as Krishna, Buddha, Lao Tzu, beings who embodied the same essence in different cultures. The quantum Christ is this universal presence that manifests in every human being willing to awaken. It is the principle of conscious life acting in resonance with the source, a direct channel with the creative intelligence of the universe. The Bible itself, even among its numerous additions and manipulations, carries traces of this truth. "The kingdom of God is within you" is one of the most radical and liberating statements ever heard. But why has it never been at the center of religious discussions? Because it empowers. Because it dissolves the need for intermediaries. The same energy that animated Jesus is available now for everyone. The difference is not in the origin, but in the recognition. He himself said, "I and the Father are one," but also said, "May they all be one as we are." This is not exclusivity. This is unity, an invitation to reintegrate with the divine consciousness that dwells in everything. This reunion with Christ outside of religious structures is also a reunion with our own human essence. When we remove the weight of doctrines, Christ re-emerges as a symbol of awakened potential, of a human being who lives aligned with truth, integrity, and unconditional love. And that human being is you. Not in the future, not after 1,000 rituals, but now. The quantum Christ is not confined to a time period. He is timeless. And when we understand this, we begin to see all the movements of history as manifestations of this consciousness, trying to break through the layers of forgetfulness and separation that have imprisoned us for ages. The very idea of sin, so prevalent in traditional theology, gains a new perspective when viewed through the lens of physics and consciousness. Sin, from the Hebrew chata, means to miss the mark. In other words, to misalign oneself from the truth. From a quantum point of view, it's when we vibrate outside of our original frequency, when we act in dissonance with universal harmony. It's not about guilt, but resonance. And Christ is the pure note of this universal symphony. Tuning in with Him is not about adopting beliefs, but aligning oneself with the flow of creation, to enter into coherence with what is real, eternal, and essential. Modern science begins to touch, albeit timidly, on the edges of this ancient truth. When we study unified fields, non-locality, superposition, and the collapse of the wave function, we realize that consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain, but rather the foundation of reality. And this consciousness, in its highest form, is what we can call quantum Christ. It's not religious to say this, it's poetic, it's scientific, it's deeply human, because it points to a reality where separation is an illusion, where every particle is connected to the whole, and where every being is a unique expression of the same essence. Jesus never intended to found a religion. This may be one of the most uncomfortable truths for many, but the most liberating for those who are ready. His teachings pointed inward, towards the expansion of consciousness, towards living in love and truth. Institutions erected temples in His name, but He always pointed to the living temple within each being. The structure collapsed, but the teaching remains, and it is more relevant than ever. In an era where science breaks paradigms and spirituality is reborn with a new language, the quantum Christ rises as the necessary bridge between the invisible and the tangible. And perhaps that's why so many are awakening, because they feel there's something beyond what they've been told, because the call doesn't come from the outside, but from within, and it has the sound of silence, the taste of truth, and the light of love. The quantum Christ doesn't need to be defended, it only needs to be lived. It doesn't demand belief, just presence, and in this presence, everything is revealed. The veils fall, duality dissolves, and reality reorganizes, because where there is light, shadows cannot resist. And Christ is this light, not of a name but of a consciousness that pulses in every atom, in every cell, in every beat of the human heart. You have been conditioned to seek outside what has always been within. The quantum Christ is the reminder, the return to the source. It's not about being holy, but about being whole, about embracing your own spark and expanding it, about understanding that the miracle is not in the extraordinary, but in the ordinary lived with full awareness. It is not in another world, but in this one, now, beside you, within you. And when this understanding descends from the mind to the heart, reality transforms. Because the external world is nothing more than a reflection of the internal world. And when the Christ awakens in us, everything around us aligns with the frequency of love. For millennia, spiritual masters have pointed to an invisible truth, something that permeates everything, connects all beings, and sustains the universe unseen. This presence has been called by many names: Spirit, Logos, Tao, Prana, Akasha, Divine Field. Today, modern science begins to approach this ancient wisdom by investigating what is known as the quantum field, an invisible, omnipresent field that carries not only subatomic particles, but also information, patterns, infinite possibilities of existence. It is in this mysterious space that the bridge between matter and mind, between the physical and the spiritual resides. And it is in this very field that the Christ consciousness manifests as a coherent frequency, as a high vibration capable of collapsing realities aligned with love, truth, and unity. The quantum field is not science fiction. It is the foundation upon which all matter is structured. Modern physics, in investigating the smallest particles of reality, discovered that everything that seems solid is, in fact, made up of 99.9999% emptiness. But this emptiness is not absence, it is pure potential. It is the space where all possibilities coexist until conscious observation defines the outcome. This phenomenon, known as the collapse of the wave function, reveals that the observer actively participates in the creation of reality. And this changes everything, because if consciousness shapes reality, then the consciousness that dwells in Christ, or the Christ consciousness, is not just a symbol, but a frequency that literally reorganizes the matrix of existence. This perception changes the way we understand the words of Jesus, when he stated, "All things whatsoever ye shall ask in faith, believing ye have received them, shall be given unto you." He was referring to a quantum principle. Faith is not blind belief. Faith is vibrational coherence with what one desires to manifest. It's aligning the internal field with the external one. It's becoming one with the intended reality. The Christ consciousness is the perfect manifestation of this alignment. It is the state in which the field of possibilities responds instantly because there is an absence of resistance, doubt, or separation. The Christ mind does not plead, it recognizes. It does not beg, it affirms. It does not wait, it manifests. In the language of the field, everything is frequency, and the frequency of Christ consciousness is one of the highest a human being can sustain. This frequency is not born from superficial positive thoughts, but from deep integration with the truth of being. It's a vibration that arises from a coherent heart, an aligned mind, a purified body. It's the state of being where the ego dissolves and divine presence takes over. And this is not empty mysticism, it's consciousness science. The HeartMath Institute, for example, has already shown that the human heart emits an electromagnetic field thousands of times more potent than that of the brain, and that this field is sensitive to intention and emotional state. In other words, genuine love has a measurable energy signature and is capable of affecting living systems around it. Christ lived in this state constantly. The quantum field responds to coherence. Where there is vibrational disorder, there is chaos. Where there is alignment, there is a miracle. Christ consciousness is the key to this alignment. It is not something external to be achieved, but an internal state to be awakened. When Jesus said that the kingdom of God was within us, he was speaking literally. The kingdom is not a place, but a frequency, a parallel reality available to anyone willing to reconnect with their essence. And the entrance to this kingdom is through the vibrational field we emit. The portal is internal, and the access is direct. It's fascinating to realize how the discoveries of quantum physics echo the teachings of spiritual masters. David Bohm, a theoretical physicist and collaborator of Einstein, argued that visible reality is just a projection of an implicit order, a deeper, invisible reality that underpins everything we see. This implicit order is like the source code of the universe, and it is there that Christ resides. Not the man, but the consciousness, the Word, the divine intelligence that orders, organizes, and supports everything with perfection. By accessing this dimension, we become conscious co-creators. We move from being victims of chance to conductors of reality. This perspective also transforms prayer. Praying is no longer asking an external being, but tuning into the internal source. It's about altering the field. It's about shaping reality from the vibrational level. Christ's words take on new life. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door will be opened. All of these are instructions for interacting with the quantum field. Each word is a code, each parable a vibrational metaphor. He taught how to alter reality, how to transcend the limitation of matter and move through the spirit, through the field. Modern physics confirms there is interconnectivity between everything. Nothing is separate. Everything vibrates in unison, and in this unison, Christ is the main melody. When we understand that everything is energy, and that this energy responds to consciousness, we realize that the figure of Christ represents the pinnacle of harmony between the self and the whole. It is the human being who has transcended separation, who vibrates in resonance with the unified field, who does not react but creates, who does not submit to matter but transcends it. And this is not reserved for a single person in history. He himself stated, "Whoever believes in me will do the works that I do, and greater ones." This is the call, not to worship, but to incorporation, not to religion, but to revelation. The quantum field is impersonal, but it responds to intention. And pure intention is the language of the soul. Christ spoke from this place. His presence was so coherent that it altered the reality around him. He didn't need to prove anything. His vibration spoke for itself, and it is this state that we are invited to inhabit. Not to be the same, but to be authentic, to access the same source with our unique identity. Because Christ consciousness does not erase who we are, it reveals who we truly are. It does not remove our individuality, but aligns it with the whole. The understanding of the quantum Christ frees us from the prison of duality. He is not in heaven or on earth, he is in both. He is not divine or human, he is the perfect union of the two. He does not belong to the past, he pulses in the eternal present. He is not limited to a name, culture, or time. He is the living truth that transcends all ages. This consciousness is universal, accessible, and real, and its call is silent, but unmistakable. It emerges as a longing for something more, like an ancient memory, like a flame that never goes out. And when we respond to this call, the field responds, reality aligns, and the miracle happens. Quantum physics shows us that we live in a universe of infinite possibilities, and the Christ consciousness is the compass that guides us to the highest possibility. It is not philosophy, it is practice. It is the act of living in presence, in love, in truth, of becoming the pure channel through which divine intelligence manifests. And this is accessible now, not after death, not after years of practice, but the moment we align with the frequency of the source. Because time, in the quantum field, is an illusion. Everything already is. Everything already exists. All we need to do is tune in. The journey of humanity is the return to unity, and Christ is the path of this reconnection, not as an external entity, but as an internal frequency. He does not require effort, but surrender. He does not ask for suffering, but presence. He does not demand sacrifice, but authenticity. And this is the greatest miracle, to discover that the divine has never been far, never been separate. It has always been a part of us, always resonated in our field, always spoken through intuition, silence, love. And when we silence the noise of the mind and listen with the heart, Christ speaks, and his voice is the same as the universe's. At some point in history, the pure message of Christ was silently fragmented, distorted, and subjected to the scrutiny of institutions that sought more control than liberation. What is known today as institutional Christianity is, in many ways, a shadow of the original teaching, a reflection filtered through the hands of political and religious power. However, among the deserts and forgotten caves of time, fragments of this teaching survived. Buried manuscripts, sealed and hidden, came back to light, carrying truths that did not fit into the mold of orthodoxy. Gospels deemed heretical reveal a surprising vision, that of a Christ who did not come to establish a religion, but to reveal the divinity present in every human being. A cosmic Christ, whose consciousness transcends time, space, and form. In 1945, an archaeological finding shook the foundations of traditional Christianity. Near the village of Nag Hammadi in Egypt, peasants discovered a library of papyri in sealed jars. There were texts previously unknown or considered lost, such as the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Treatise on the Resurrection, and other records of the early Gnostic tradition. These writings did not describe a distant Jesus, divinized in dogmas, but an enlightened master who pointed the way to self-realization. Instead of preaching salvation through faith in an external event, he guided the individual to delve into themselves, to awaken from spiritual sleep, to recognize the divine spark present in their own being. This perspective does not deny the historical figure of Jesus. It expands it, revealing his role as a reflection of the Christ consciousness that permeates everything. The Gospel of Thomas, perhaps the most intriguing of all, begins with a radical statement. These are the hidden words that the living Jesus spoke. And Didymus Judas Thomas wrote, "Whoever discovers the meaning of these words will not experience death." There is no narrative of miracles, crucifixion, or resurrection. There are pure, direct, incisive teachings. Jesus is not presented as a savior to be worshipped, but as a mirror of inner truth. In one of the Logians, he states, "If they ask you, 'What is the sign of your Father in you?' tell them, 'It is a movement and a rest.'" Such a statement carries, in a few words, the totality of quantum cosmology. Everything is energy and vibration and consciousness in silence, particle and wave, duality and unity. The Christ that emerges from these words is cosmic, timeless, universal. These texts also reveal a profound understanding of the nature of reality as consciousness. They talk about the pleroma, the fullness of divine light, where all things exist in perfect potentiality. They also talk about ignorance as the true fall of man, not a moral sin, but the forgetting of his divine origin. The fall, therefore, is not a historical event, but a vibrational state of disconnection. The role of Christ in this view is not that of a redeemer, but of a reminder, the one who awakens the memory of light. This vision resonates deeply with the principles of quantum physics, where everything exists as a possibility until it is observed, where reality depends on the consciousness that contemplates it. The Christ of the Gnostic manuscripts does not ask for worship, but presence. He does not demand belief, but perception. The exclusion of these texts from the official councils, such as that of Nicaea in 325 AD, was not a coincidence. It was a strategic move. The Roman Empire, by adopting Christianity as its official religion, shaped the accepted Gospels to consolidate authority, centralize power, and establish a model of faith that relied on external structures. Those who held that the kingdom of God was internal, that the connection with the divine was direct and personal, were persecuted, labeled as heretics, silenced. Gnosis, a word that means knowledge, was not an enemy of faith, but of ignorance. It represented the living flame of inner knowledge, of direct connection with the divine, without intermediaries. And this was precisely what threatened the empires, people who could no longer be manipulated by fear. As we revisit these writings through the lens of modern science, we notice a striking convergence. The Gnostic idea that the material universe is an emanation, not the ultimate reality, resonates with the quantum understanding that the physical world is an illusion created by the mind when collapsing waves of possibilities. The Gnostic Christ is the one who transcended the illusion of matter, who saw beyond the veil and invites us to do the same. Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift up a stone, and you will find me. This phrase, present in the Gospel of Thomas, reveals that Christ is not limited to a figure, but pulses throughout all creation. He is the living consciousness, the creative principle, the intelligence that animates everything. The lost manuscripts also reveal another important layer, the role of the sacred feminine. In texts such as the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, we see a disciple who deeply understood Jesus' teachings, participated in his inner revelations, and was called by him the one who sees. However, her role was erased by the dominant patriarchal tradition. The reintegration of the feminine into the spiritual journey is essential for the awakening of the Christ consciousness. Because Christ is not male or female, he is the perfect union of the two. It is the point of balance between strength and tenderness, between action and surrender, between logic and intuition. This sacred unity is the true nature of awakened consciousness. The cosmic Christ is not a new idea. It has been recognized by mystics of all times and traditions. Francis of Assisi saw him in the trees, in the wind, in the animals. Rumi felt him in the silence between the verses. Teilhard de Chardin, a Jesuit priest and scientist, spoke of the Omega Point, a stage of human evolution where consciousness would unify in Christ, not as an external event, but as an internal integration, a spiritual and energetic maturity of humanity. These visionaries captured what the Gnostics already knew, that Christ is a field, a consciousness that permeates everything, that calls us not out of ourselves, but to the center of our being. In rescuing lost manuscripts, we recover not only texts, but forgotten parts of ourselves. We reclaim keys to access dimensions of consciousness that were deliberately closed off. It's no coincidence that we are living in an era of revelations today. What was hidden is coming to light, not only by archaeologists, but by inner seekers. The truth cannot be buried forever. It pulses, vibrates, insists on emerging. Because the Christ consciousness is movement, is light, is life, and no system can imprison it. It always finds a crack, a channel, an awakened soul to manifest itself. The rediscovery of the cosmic Christ is, therefore, the rediscovery of our own cosmic identity. We are made of the same substance that animates the stars. We are particles of the eternal Word that became flesh in every conscious existence. We are singular expressions of the same source, and when we access this truth, we stop living as fragments and start living as fractals, parts that contain the whole. Separation dissolves, duality pacifies, and love, which is the fundamental frequency of the field, begins to flow freely again, not as a human feeling, but as the very structure of reality. In this context, the lost manuscripts are not just historical records. They are vibrational mirrors. They are reminders of what we were, what we are, and what we can be. They carry encodings of consciousness that awaken something profound in our spiritual DNA. It is not necessary to understand them intellectually. Just feel them. Because the truth, when it is alive, resonates before it is understood. And by allowing this resonance, Christ makes his presence known. Not the crucified man, but the eternal light that overcomes death because it was never born. And now, more than ever, it calls us to remember. Long before modern science attempted to describe the fundamental forces that govern the universe, the ancients already understood that everything obeys immutable, invisible, and highly organized laws. They called them universal laws, cosmic principles, or hermetic laws. These laws weren't created by anyone, not even by gods. They are the very structure of existence, eternal and omnipresent. Every movement in the universe, every human thought, every heartbeat, and every quantum event is aligned or misaligned with these laws. And what few have realized is that Christ's teachings, those deepest, symbolic, and unadulterated, are direct manifestations of these laws. The quantum Christ not only knew these truths, he was their living expression. He didn't just talk about love, unity, forgiveness, and faith. He embodied them as a coherent frequency with the higher order that sustains all of creation. The first of these laws is mentalism. Everything is mind. The universe is a mental creation. The Logos, the Word, the in the beginning was the Word, all point to the same reality. Consciousness precedes form. Jesus, when asserting, "If you believe, you will see the glory of God," was applying the principle that reality is born first in the mind and heart. Nothing manifests without first being conceived in thought and emotion. He didn't wait for miracles to happen before believing. He believed, and then the miracle became inevitable. His faith was not blind, it was vibrationally accurate. He operated in perfect harmony with the law of mentalism, shaping reality from the clarity of his consciousness. The second law is correspondence. As above, so below. This law is perhaps the most present in the hidden words of Christ. When he said on earth as it is in heaven, he was directly referring to the correspondence between planes. Everything that exists in the physical is a reflection of the subtle. Every healing, every multiplication, every parable was also a mirror of higher realities. The seeds sown in different soils, the hidden talents, the yeast in the bread, all represented invisible structures operating simultaneously at all levels of reality. By understanding this law, we come to realize that transforming the external is, above all, transforming the internal, because what vibrates within shapes what appears outside. The third law is vibration. Nothing is still, everything moves, everything vibrates. This is one of the most powerful bridges between science and spirituality. Quantum physics today proves that everything, absolutely everything, is in constant energetic motion. The difference between a sick body and a healthy body is a difference in frequency. The difference between fear and love is a difference in vibration. And Jesus lived at the highest possible vibration, that of unconditional love, of absolute coherence, of pure presence. He touched the sick, and they were healed, not because there was magic, but because his frequency reordered the other's vibrational field. He did not perform miracles as exceptions to natural laws, but as deep alignment with them. The miracle was the consequence of vibrational mastery. The fourth law is polarity. Everything has two poles. Everything has its opposite. Love and hate, light and shadow, heat and cold. Christ understood this law like no one else. He didn't deny the darkness. He transmuted it with light. He walked among sinners, not to judge them, but to reveal that even in darkness there is a seed of redemption. The cross, the ultimate symbol of pain and death, became, in his experience, a symbol of rebirth and victory over illusion. This is the essence of transmuted polarity, understanding that every extreme carries within it the seed of its opposite. The quantum Christ did not flee from pain. He traversed it with awareness and converted it into light. This is spiritual mastery, not denying the poles, but integrating them. The fifth law is rhythm. Everything flows and ebbs. Everything has its cycles. Christ knew the times. He knew when to withdraw, when to speak, when to act, when to be silent. His actions were in perfect sync with the rhythms of the universe. He respected the maturation time of the seeds, understood the cycle of pain as part of the blossoming of consciousness. He himself surrendered to the rhythmic process of death and resurrection, not as a spectacle, but as a map. He showed that everything that dies is reborn, that winter precedes spring, that the dark night of the soul precedes the dawn of the awakened spirit. This deep understanding of cycles is what allows one to walk with peace, even in chaos. The sixth law is cause and effect. For every action, there is a reaction. Nothing happens by chance. Each thought, each word, each gesture emits an energy that returns in the form of circumstance. Jesus taught this by stating, "With the measure you use, it will be measured to you." He lived in absolute vibrational responsibility. He knew that what you sow, you reap. He didn't need the idea of divine punishment. The law of return was enough. When he spoke of forgiveness, he also spoke of liberation from the karmic chain, from the repetition of patterns, from the prison of the ego. Forgiving was not forgetting. It was dissolving the energetic link that binds us to suffering. It was applying the highest cause, love, to reap the most liberating effect, peace. The seventh law is generation. Everything has a masculine and feminine principle. Everything manifests through this union. The quantum Christ was the fusion of these polarities. He did not deny the feminine. He honored it. He welcomed, nurtured, understood. Mary Magdalene, the mother, the women who followed him, all had an essential role in his journey. He restored balance. He knew that creation is born from the dance between reason and intuition, between action and reception, and his own existence was the fruit of the superior generation, the incarnation of the Spirit in the field of matter. He was the living symbol of the union between heaven and earth, between the Father and the Mother, between the Spirit and the body. These 7 laws, when understood and lived, reveal that Christ did not come to teach us to pray for external help, but to align ourselves with the flow of creation. He was the example of what is possible when living in absolute coherence with the vibrational structure of the universe. It wasn't about following moral rules, but about becoming the living law itself. He didn't just say, "Do this," he showed how to live it, with his presence, his vibration, his total surrender. And this is the true initiation, not memorizing texts, but becoming the living scripture itself. The quantum Christ is the human model operating at its highest spiritual and scientific expression. It doesn't need dogmas, as it sustains itself in coherence with the whole. It doesn't demand temples, for it is the temple itself. And by following its vibrational footprints, we don't become religious, we become aware. Living according to universal laws is not only spiritual wisdom, but it's soul engineering. It's physics applied to the spirit. It's knowing how to navigate the field of infinite possibilities with integrity, presence, and love. The Gospels, when read with this vibrational perspective, become manuals for consciousness activation. Each parable is a key, each gesture is a symbol, each word is a code. Christ spoke to those who had ears to hear, that is, those whose fields were open to resonate with the higher laws. He was not founding a religion, he was restoring access to the original manual of existence. And this manual is vibrational, it is alive, it is coded in the frequencies of the awakened heart. Finally, understanding and living the universal laws through the lens of Christ is to take the lead in one's own existence. It is to stop being a piece on the board and become a co-author of the game of life. It is to abandon the illusion of separation, chance, and powerlessness, and to don the robe of divine consciousness. Christ did not come to rescue us from a future hell. He came to awaken us from a present sleep. And by aligning ourselves with these laws, we move from survival to co-creation. We move from fear into the flow, and in this state, no chaos can withstand the order of light. The traditional view of the human body has been, for centuries, confined to mechanical biology. Bones, muscles, tissues, and a brain that commands basic functions. A meat machine driven by electrical and chemical impulses. However, the oldest spiritual traditions have always asserted something far beyond this. They speak of a subtle body, a vehicle of light, a living temple that connects heaven and earth. Today, with the advancement of multidisciplinary sciences, from epigenetics to quantum physics, we are called to reassess what we are. Christ, in his entirety, was not just a charismatic figure endowed with spiritual wisdom, but the full manifestation of an activated human being, operating with a fully awakened energy system. The resurrection, the transfiguration, and the many feats attributed to him were not miracles in the mystical sense, but rather natural manifestations of a highly elevated biological and spiritual field, a body of light operating in full resonance with the quantum field. This light body is not a metaphor. It is a real energetic structure that envelops, penetrates, and interacts with the physical body. Also known by names such as Merkaba, Christ body, glory body, or coherent energy body, this luminous matrix is present in all human beings, but in a latent state. In the case of Christ, it was fully activated. It was the vehicle through which he manifested on different planes, healed with the laying on of hands, moved through crowds unseen, and ultimately transcended death itself. This subtle body is nourished by elevated emotions, coherent thoughts, and a unified field of consciousness. It is structured not in carbon, but in light. It is pure sacred geometry, pulsating in perfect vibrational order. And this activation begins at the core of our biology, DNA. For a long time, it was believed that DNA was just a fixed code, an immutable genetic manual. Worse still, 97% of it was labeled as junk DNA, as it does not encode proteins. But with the advances in quantum biology and epigenetics, we discovered that these 97% contain latent potentials, true reality switches that activate according to the vibrational environment. In other words, our biology responds to the energy field. And this field is shaped by our consciousness, our emotions, our intention. Christ had fully activated DNA, not in terms of helix number, but in degree of resonance. His code vibrated in absolute coherence with the source. And it is this model that we are being invited to access again. DNA is a cosmic antenna. It captures, transmits, and responds to light, sound, and intention. Russian scientists have demonstrated that it can be influenced by specific frequencies, and that it can even reprogram its structure through coherent stimuli. This means that the thoughts, feelings, and words we emit daily are literally shaping the expression of our physical and energetic body. The ancients knew this, and so they chanted mantras, invoked sacred names, practiced elevated states of gratitude and love. They knew that sound is vibration, and vibration organizes matter. Christ was the living vibration of the Word. When he said, "I am the resurrection and the life," he was not declaring a title, but a vibrational state that activated his own genetic code of light. And at the center of this divine biotechnology is the pineal gland, the secret jewel of the temple. Located between the brain hemispheres, the pineal is an enigmatic structure, sensitive to light, sound, and the Earth's magnetic field. It is the portal between the physical and the spiritual. When activated, it allows mystical experiences, visions, connections with higher dimensions, and altered states of consciousness. Jesus spoke of the importance of being single-eyed, a direct reference to the activation of the pineal. He knew that enlightenment was not only spiritual, but also neurobiological. The pineal secretes dimethyltryptamine, DMT, known as the spirit molecule, and it is highly sensitive to states of vibrational coherence. Love, truth, compassion, and deep meditation are natural catalysts for pineal activation. The activation of the light body goes through several stages. First, the alignment of energy centers or chakras. Christ, although he never used this term, expressed the principles of these centers in his life. He spoke with authority, solar plexus, healed with his hands, heart, emanated compassion, throat, saw beyond appearances, third eye, and manifested miracles, crown. He was the embodiment of a human being with all energy centers operating in harmony. Secondly, the purification of the emotional field. The vibration of fear, guilt, and anger fragments the light field. The vibration of love, joy, and gratitude expands it. Christ lived in a constant state of unconditional love, not as an emotion, but as a state of being. Crystalline activation is another key element in this journey. Our body contains natural crystals, primarily in the pineal gland and cerebrospinal fluid. These crystals are receivers and transmitters of high frequencies. Crystalline activation is the process by which our body begins to operate in symmetry with light geometries. Science has already identified that crystals respond to intention and information. When we align our thoughts and feelings with elevated patterns, these internal crystals reconfigure, increasing our ability to receive and emit coherent light. Christ was literally a living crystalline field. Hence he radiated presence, magnetism, spiritual authority, and effortless love. The light that makes up this subtle body is not visible to the common eye, but it is detectable by sensitive instruments and perceptible by expanded states of consciousness. In some traditions, it is called the diamond body, rainbow body, or ascended body. In all, the principle is the same. It is a high-frequency vehicle that allows the spirit to inhabit matter without suffering its limitations. The resurrected Christ appeared and disappeared, passed through walls, manifested in different forms, because he was no longer bound to density. He was light in human form, and this is not a divine exclusivity, but a human potential. And this activation is not just a spiritual event, it's a process. It begins with mental, emotional, and physical detoxification. It continues with the cultivation of presence, conscious breathing, and vibrational eating. It expands with practices of gratitude, meditation, mantras, sacred geometry, and alignment with inner truth. And it culminates in surrendering to the flow of life, where the ego gives way to essence. The quantum Christ lives in every cell that vibrates in coherence with the light. There is no separation between spirituality and biology. There is a fusion. Enlightenment is not an escape from the flesh, but its vibrational transcendence. Humanity is now in a collective process of transitioning from a carbon body to a light body. This does not mean ceasing to be physical, but transforming the quality of matter. Our electromagnetic field is changing. Our DNA is being exposed to new cosmic frequencies. The Earth itself is raising its vibration. And all of this is activating dormant codes, accelerating the collective awakening. Christ is the model for this transition. He has already lived through this process, not to be worshipped, but to be mirrored. He showed us what is possible, and now, more than ever, it is time to remember. This awakening of the light body is, in essence, the return to our original state. It's remembering that we are spiritual beings living a human experience, not the other way around. It's about restoring cosmic memory, the connection with the source, the soul's mission. Christ did not come to save us. He came to remind us of what we are. And by activating this light body, we become living portals of the new consciousness. We start to live in a different time, a different space, a different vibration. And in this new state, everything changes. Because where there is coherent light, there is no room for illusion. The heart has always been poetically described as the dwelling place of the soul. But what for centuries was treated as mere symbolism is beginning to be unequivocally confirmed by science. The new neuroscience, combined with quantum physics and psychophysiology, reveals that the heart is much more than a muscular pump. It is a sophisticated intelligence center, endowed with a powerful electromagnetic field, capable of influencing the body, the mind, and even the surrounding environment. This field is sensitive to emotions, especially the so-called coherent emotions, such as gratitude, love, and compassion. And it is in this field that one of the greatest keys to understanding Christ consciousness resides. The heart is the gateway between the human and the divine, between the visible and the quantum, between the self and the whole. Christ not only loved, he vibrated with deep compassion, and this vibration was a science applied to reality. He was a coherent quantum field that reordered chaos with the presence of absolute love. The HeartMath Institute, one of the most revolutionary institutions of recent decades, has revealed that the heart has about 40,000 specialized neurons, forming its own nervous system, the so-called heart brain. This system not only sends signals to the brain, but also directly influences decision-making, perception, and behavior centers. Furthermore, the heart's electromagnetic field is the most powerful in the human body, extending several meters around the body and demonstrably affecting the field of others. When a person enters a state of heart coherence, they emit a frequency that resonates with the unified field, promoting healing, harmony, and alignment. This is precisely the state in which Christ continuously lived. He was a field of coherence vibrating in resonance with the matrix of the universe. Compassion, in this context, is not a sentimental feeling or a moral impulse. It's a vibrational technology. It's the frequency that opens channels between realities. The compassionate heart is the greatest transmitter of quantum information in the human body. It operates as a bridge between dimensions, integrating the rational mind with the field of intuition and higher intelligence. Compassion activates the parasympathetic autonomic nervous system, reduces inflammation, enhances immunity, and profoundly alters the structure of DNA. Yes, studies show that elevated emotional states affect gene expression. This means that love transforms biology. Christ knew this, not because he read it in some manual, but because he lived this truth in every cell. He healed with touch, with presence, with word, because his compassion was radiant. It was vibrational science in action. The Gospels are filled with moments when Jesus is deeply moved, not out of emotional weakness, but due to a total vibrational identification with others. He saw suffering and transmuted it. He saw fear and dissolved it with a glance. His compassion was not passive, it was active, transformative, radiated in the form of coherent waves that touched and realigned people's fields. When he said, "Your faith has healed you," he acknowledged the reordering of that person's vibrational field. They believed, vibrated, accessed the field, and he, as a catalyst, amplified this process. The miracle was not an arbitrary divine act. It was a consequence of the meeting between two coherent fields, the compassionate heart of Christ and the vibrational openness of the other. The science of compassion also reveals that emotions such as love and gratitude generate harmonious brainwaves, synchronizing the brain hemispheres and promoting states of high cognitive and intuitive performance. This means that love makes us smarter, not just emotionally, but neurologically. It activates areas of the brain associated with empathy, creativity, resilience, and ethical decision-making. Christ was the living expression of this integrated intelligence. He was not just a spiritual master, but a biological and neurological model of coherence. His system operated in perfect alignment with the source, and this alignment generated natural miracles. The quantum heart is a concept that merges these modern discoveries with ancient teachings. It describes the state in which the human heart acts as a direct interface with the unified field, the ocean of energy and information that interconnects everything. In this state, the heart not only feels, but knows. It captures data, reads frequencies, accesses non-linear realities. It becomes a cosmic antenna, tuned in to the wisdom of the universe. Christ accessed this level fully. That's why he knew what people were thinking, felt what they were feeling, knew their stories without anyone uttering a word. This was not magic. It was consciousness technology. The frequency of compassion is measurable. It is coherent. It is expansive. It collapses chaos and orders the field around it. Studies with meditative groups have shown that when several people enter a state of deep love and compassion, rates of violence in entire regions fall. The collective field responds. reality responds. Christ was the ultimate manifestation of this field in action. His life was a living laboratory of the new physics, or of the eternal physics, not yet fully understood. He did not just come to teach, but to demonstrate. He was the embodied example of the science of love. This intelligence of the heart is, therefore, the next step in human evolution. We have already surpassed the era of the rational mind as sovereign. Now is the time for the fusion between reason and compassion, between logic and sensitivity, between intellect and intuition. Christ already lived at this point of integration. He did not deny reason, but put it at the service of love. His wisdom was not dual, it was whole. There was no separation between thought and feeling. Both operated as a single energy. And it is this state of integration that prepares us to inhabit the new field of consciousness that is opening up for humanity. The science of the heart also reconnects us with something that has been distorted for centuries: the notion of love as a structuring force of the cosmos. For a long time, love was relegated to the sphere of the emotional, the affective, the relational. But true love, agape as the Greeks called it, is the fundamental frequency of the universe. It's the quantum glue that holds everything together. It's the original vibration. It's the primordial sound. Christ was not just talking about love, he was love in human form. His life was a vibrational note that resonated with the music of the spheres, with the symphony of creation. This same frequency is accessible to everyone. It's not something reserved for saints or enlightened ones. The heart of every human being has the capacity to enter into coherence. It's a matter of practice, intention, and presence. Conscious breathing, daily gratitude, deep listening, and alignment with inner truth are simple and powerful keys to activate this state. And once activated, the heart becomes a reality-generating field, a portal that transforms not only the individual, but everything around them. True compassion has this power. It alters fields, dissolves patterns, retrieves memories, heals generations. The quantum Christ is the culmination of this process. It represents the fully integrated human, vibrating in coherence with cosmic love. It is the proof that enlightenment is not the denial of pain, but its transcendence. It is not an escape from the world, but its transmutation. And the central point of this transmutation is the heart. Not just the physical heart, but the heart as the vibrational command center. The one that feels, intuits, loves, and recognizes the truth beyond logic. The heart that sees God in everything, that understands the pain of others as its own, that chooses good even when the world chooses otherwise. The call is now clear. Return to the heart. Let the loving intelligence guide decisions, relationships, actions. Allow the frequency of compassion to restructure the mind, body, and reality around. Christ is not a distant figure. He is a frequency that pulses in the heart of those willing to listen. And by aligning with this frequency, we become living channels of the new world that is being born. A world where science meets the soul, where compassion heals, where love is not weakness, but light technology. Few concepts have been as misunderstood, distorted, and minimized as that of ascension. For many, it has transformed into an unattainable idea, a privilege of divine beings or distant saints, as if it were something external to the common human experience. However, when we carefully observe the profound teachings of Christ, not those conditioned by the lenses of dogma, but those that resonate as pure truth, we understand that ascension is not an exception, but a direction. It is not a supernatural event, but a natural consequence of a fully awakened consciousness, a deep alignment with the essence of life. Ascension is not about escaping the body, time, or earth. It is transcending the illusion of separation and living in full harmony with the quantum reality of being. Jesus did not come to show an impossible path. He lived as an encoded map, revealing that liberation is available here and now when consciousness expands beyond the limits of matter, ego, and linearity. Death, in the context of ascension, loses its traditional meaning. It is not an end, nor a punishment. It is merely a transition of frequency. Consciousness is not contained within the body. The body is what manifests within consciousness. Jesus demonstrated this unequivocally by resurrecting with a subtle body, a body that passed through walls, that manifested and disappeared at will, that no longer obeyed the laws of conventional physics. But he didn't do this to impress, but to demonstrate. His resurrection was not a religious spectacle, it was a living lesson in consciousness physics. The body that dissolved on the cross was reborn as condensed light, as coherent energy in a higher vibrational state. He did not return from death, he transcended death. He crossed the border of the third dimension and returned with a body of the fifth, sixth, or even higher frequencies, demonstrating that the awakened spirit reorganizes matter. To understand ascension, it is necessary to abandon the linear notion of time. Modern physics already confirms that time as we perceive it is a construct of the three-dimensional mind. The past, present, and future coexist in a unified field of possibilities, and consciousness can access them simultaneously. Christ demonstrated this mastery when he spoke with authority about what was to come, when he read thoughts, when he performed instant healings. He was not bound to the common flow of time. His consciousness vibrated at a point outside of time, the eternal now, where everything is possible because everything already is. Ascension is this: living beyond the illusion of time, accessing timelessness and operating from it. It's realizing that the now is the only real point, and that it contains all the potential of the universe. Furthermore, ascension implies the transcendence of space as separation. Non-locality, one of the principles of quantum physics, shows that two entangled particles react simultaneously, regardless of the distance that separates them. This scientific truth was already experienced by Jesus when he healed from a distance, when he knew what was happening in distant places, when he appeared to the disciples in different locations without moving in a conventional way. He was the manifestation of conscious non-locality. Ascension placed him in a state of consciousness where space was not an obstacle, because he was connected to everything. He did not move through space. He manifested presence directly where his consciousness was required. This is field mastery. This is vibrational ascension. Another crucial aspect of ascension is the abandonment of limited identity. The ego, as a structure of separation, cannot cross the veil of ascension. Christ made this clear when, upon resurrecting, he was not immediately recognized by his disciples. Mary Magdalene, upon seeing him, thought he was a gardener. The disciples of Emmaus conversed with him during a long journey without realizing who he was. This does not mean that he had physically changed, but that his vibration was so high that recognition required tuning. He no longer identified with the form, with the name, with the story. He had returned to pure essence. Ascension calls us to this same process, the dissolution of the egoic identity of the separate self to emerge as pure, free, unlimited consciousness. The ascension also involves the integration of multiple dimensions of the being. Each human being is not just a physical body, but a multidimensional complex of energy, emotion, mind, soul, and spirit. These layers coexist, but usually operate in a fragmented way. The ascension process reintegrates them. It unites all parts of the being into one coherent field. This is what mystics referred to as returning to the Father's house, what Hindus call samadhi, Buddhists enlightenment, Kabbalists union with Ein Sof. Jesus spoke of this simply: I and the Father are one. This is not a theological metaphor, but an accurate description of a state of consciousness where all layers of the being vibrate in harmony with the source. The result is absolute peace, full presence, direct wisdom. The process of ascension is deeply personal, but also collective. The earth, as a living being, is also ascending. Its frequency is rising. Its magnetic field is changing. Its vibrations are accelerating. This directly impacts all beings that inhabit it. Those who resist this elevation feel discomfort, confusion, emotional disorder. Those who surrender to the process begin to experience expansion of consciousness, synchronicities, profound insights, spontaneous healings. Christ was the pioneer of this planetary process. He anchored the vibration of quantum love in the human collective field. And today, this field is being reactivated on a global scale. Ascension is not only individual, it is the natural evolution of a species towards its spiritual maturity. Ascending is also freeing oneself from the fear-based control matrix. The structures that upheld the illusion of separation, dogmatic religions, oppressive political systems, exclusionary economic models, are crumbling because they can no longer sustain the new frequency. Christ challenged these structures in his time. He confronted priests and rulers, not with violence, but with presence. His mere existence brought down systems based on lies. And this is what happens in each being that awakens. The inner light begins to dissolve the external shadows. Ascension is a movement of internal liberation that inevitably transforms the world around. At the quantum level, ascension is the elevation of the personal field frequency to the point where the outer reality responds immediately to the inner field. It's a state where one no longer depends on external circumstances to experience fullness. Christ already operated this way. He was not affected by storms, he calmed them. He was not limited by scarcity, he multiplied. He was not a hostage to time, he lived in the eternal now. This is the model he left us. A complete human being, vibrating in coherence with the unified field, operating as a conscious extension of the creative source. Death, for Christ, was merely a door, a passage, and that's what it is for everyone who understands the vibrational reality. Death is not a punishment, nor an end, but a change of state. The true death for him was the forgetting of who we are, unconsciousness, spiritual sleep. Let the dead bury their dead, he said. He was referring to those who live disconnected from the essence, even while physically alive. Ascension is the awakening from this lethargy. It's the remembrance of I am. It's the daily resurrection of the consciousness that refuses to remain asleep. And finally, ascension is the return to communion with the whole. It is the reintegration of the particle into the ocean without losing its individuality, but elevating it to its highest expression. Christ did not disappear into the whole. He became the full expression of the whole. And this is what we are called to do. Not to run away from the world, but to sanctify it with our presence. Not to deny matter, but to spiritualize it. Not to wait for future salvation, but to embody the frequency of eternity now, because ascension is not a destination, it is a state of being. Among the most enigmatic and powerful words that Christ uttered is the famous statement, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." For centuries, this declaration has been interpreted as exclusivist, as if salvation were possible only through a specific historical figure. But when we look at it in the light of expanded consciousness and universal laws, its true meaning emerges with crystal clarity. The I am is the original frequency, the divine presence that dwells in everything and everyone. Christ was not referring to himself as a separate individual, but as an embodied universal principle. He was not pointing to himself as the end, but as an example. He did not demand worship, but embodiment. Way is the journey of the awakening consciousness. Truth is coherence with the divine source. Life is the full manifestation of the Christ frequency in matter. Thus, the true call is not to believe in Christ, but to become one with the Christ within oneself. This journey of embodiment is the deepest silent revolution a human can experience. It means abandoning the dependence on external authorities for validation, meaning, or salvation. It is the sovereign return to internal truth, to the wisdom that vibrates in the heart and aligns with the soul. The Christ within us is not a metaphor, it is a real, active, operating presence. He is the intelligence of life that guides, sustains, orientates, and transforms. He is the bridge between the visible and the invisible. And when this frequency is activated in our field, everything changes. Thoughts, emotions, choices, relationships, health, prosperity, and worldview. The frequency of Christ reorganizes both internal and external chaos, not by imposition, but by resonance. Frequency is the key to everything. Every human being emits a unique vibrational field, but this field can be tuned, elevated, purified. When we align ourselves with the frequency of Christ, we access a field of higher intelligence that begins to guide our reality from the inside out. Destructive thoughts lose their power. Disharmonic emotions are dissolved. There's a sense of alignment, of flow, of clarity that doesn't come from the logical mind, but from the intelligence of the being. This attunement is achieved with practice, with surrender, with presence. It's not a magic formula. It's a frequency cultivated through the truth lived in everyday life. And this truth is not written in books, but engraved in the structure of our being. When Christ said, "You are the light of the world," he was not speaking in figurative language. He recognized in others the same essence that vibrated within him. He saw the hidden Christ-like potential beneath layers of fear, conditioning, and illusion. His gaze was a quantum mirror that activated forgotten memories. He awakened what was dormant. And this is the call that echoes to this day. It's not about following moral rules or external dogmas, but about tuning into the field of truth. A truth that liberates not because it is absolute, but because it is experiential. It is the truth of coherence, of integrity, of connection with the whole. It is the truth that recognizes that everything is interconnected and that every action vibrates in all directions. The frequency of Christ within us is accessed in silence, in contemplation, in conscious breathing, in choosing love over fear, compassion over judgment, presence over distraction. It manifests when we are honest with our feelings, when we surrender to the flow of life, when we stop fighting against what is and start collaborating with the greater intelligence. Christ is a presence that does not force, but invites. It does not demand, but inspires. He is not outside, but inside. He is the original tone of the soul, the vibration that organizes chaos and manifests divine order in all things. And by living in this frequency, we become not just seekers of light, but emitters of it. Living with Christ within us is living in a state of deep vibrational responsibility. It is understanding that every thought creates, every word shapes, every emotion impacts the field around us. It is comprehending that there is no separation between spirituality and practical life. The Christ within us manifests in the way we treat people, how we care for the planet, how we nourish ourselves, how we manage time, money, relationships. He expresses himself in every detail of everyday life because he is an integral vibration. He does not dwell only in moments of prayer, but in the simplest acts done with awareness. He is in the quality of presence, not in the quantity of rituals. This incarnation of the Christic frequency transforms personal reality and, by extension, transforms the world. The true revolution does not happen in the streets, but in the subtle fields of consciousness. A human being in coherence with the inner Christ emits a vibration that restructures the collective field. Their presence heals, their word organizes, their silence emanates peace. They become a vibrational anchor for the new paradigm. Christ said, "Where two or more are gathered in my name, there I am." The name does not refer to the label, but to the frequency. When two or more consciousnesses tune into the Christic field, they create a vortex of resonance that affects the whole environment. This is applied spiritual physics. The process of incorporating Christ within us inevitably requires detachment from the old identity. The ego fights to maintain control, seeks recognition, defends rigid truths. But the internal Christ does not fight, he simply is. He observes without reacting, loves unconditionally, acts effortlessly. As we align ourselves with him, old pains surface to be healed, limiting beliefs collapse, internal structures crumble. This might seem chaotic, but it is the beginning of liberation. It is the purification of the inner temple so that the light can fully dwell. And every step of this process is sacred, even the most challenging ones. Because everything that does not resonate with the truth needs to be dissolved so that the new can emerge. The frequency of Christ within us is that of unconditional love, not emotional love, which depends on another, but the love that springs from the fullness of being. It is the love that understands, that includes, that forgives, that liberates. This love cannot be taught. It can only be experienced. It is the vibrational note of the universe in its purest expression. And when this note is played in our field, everything harmonizes. Relationships heal, synchronicities increase, intuition intensifies, life enters into flow. Suffering does not disappear, but it loses its power to dominate us. pain continues to exist, but it is seen as part of the purification process. And in this state, peace ceases to be an ideal and becomes the solid ground on which we walk. Christ in us is also the manifestation of the I am. This expression, used by him with such intensity, is the key to realignment with the source. The I am is the affirmation of full existence, of spiritual identity beyond name, profession, history. It is the recognition that we are the direct expression of divine consciousness, co-creators of reality, seeds of eternity living in experience in time. When we say, I am light, I am peace, I am love, we are not affirming a desire, but reminding a forgotten truth. The verb creates, the word vibrates, consciousness responds. This incorporation does not depend on religion, culture, or tradition. It is universal. The Christ within us can manifest through different avenues, through meditation, prayer, art, service, presence. The form does not matter. What matters is the vibration. Every human being has their own path of return, and all paths converge to the same center, the awakened heart. This is the altar where Christ reveals himself, not in theories, but in practice, not in promises, but in experience, not tomorrow, but now, because the only time in which the Christ frequency can be lived is the eternal present. The truth is that there is no more time to postpone this meeting. Humanity has reached a tipping point. Separation no longer sustains existence. The new earth can only be inhabited by consciousnesses that vibrate in unity, love, and responsibility. The Christ within us is the bridge to this new reality. He is the activating code, the seed of the new era, the map to return to the vibrational home. And each one who awakens becomes a point of light in this rising collective field. It's no longer about waiting for an external savior, but about activating the internal savior. It's no longer about praying for intervention, but about vibrating as a channel for the solution. Christ lives within us as a dormant potential, waiting for the touch of consciousness to bloom. He does not impose, he waits. He does not invade, he invites. And when the soul responds, the entire universe reorganizes, because the frequency of Christ is not just a possibility, it is our origin, and by living it, we do not become special, we become whole, and it is in this wholeness that life finds its true meaning. We are on the threshold of a new era, a transition so profound that its magnitude still eludes the understanding of most. The world as we knew it is crumbling on various levels. Institutions, economic systems, scientific paradigms, religious structures, everything is being undone to make way for something completely new. This transformation is not just political, technological, or social. It is spiritual. It is vibrational. It is quantum. We are entering into a new planetary frequency, and with it, an entirely different humanity is born, a civilization based on expanded consciousness, on the integration of spirit and science, between reason and intuition, between heaven and earth. At the center of this transition is the quantum Christ, not as a religious figure, but as a code of consciousness. The living archetype of an integrated human being, vibrating in unity with the source and co-creating reality with full presence. The new era is Christic not because it will be Christian, but because it will be vibrationally aligned to the field of love coherence. An era where scientific knowledge will cease to deny the invisible and will finally recognize that the universe is, above all, expanding consciousness. The ancient science, built on the pillars of fragmentation, mechanistic understanding, and materialism, is giving way to an integrative, holistic, and living science. The most avant-garde physicists already understand that matter is just a condensed expression of energy, that everything is interconnected, that the observer influences the observed, that the quantum field responds to intention. Discoveries about quantum entanglement, wave function collapse, non-locality, and the interweaving of particles reveal what spiritual masters have been teaching for millennia, that reality is shaped from the inside out, that we are active co-creators of the world we perceive, that the universe is a conscious organism constantly in dialogue with our frequency. This union between science and spirituality is no longer a future ideal, it is already underway. We are witnessing the dissolution of the wall that separated the visible from the invisible, the rational from the spiritual, the sacred from the empirical. And at the center of this union is Christ as a model consciousness. The new planetary consciousness will recognize the human being as a bioenergetic system, an information field in continuous interaction with the environment. Health will be understood as vibrational balance, education as an expansion of consciousness, spirituality as the applied science of transcendence. There will no longer be a separation between the science of the atom and the science of the soul. The most advanced technologies will be those that harmonize the field, restore coherence, and expand perception. Christ, in his entirety, was an expression of this new humanity: whole, present, connected, compassionate, creative. He did not just come to show a model of kindness. He demonstrated a consciousness engineering that will be the foundation of the civilization that is now beginning to emerge. The new era will also bring about the reintegration of the sacred feminine. For a long time, the history of humanity has been written from a logic of domination, control, and exclusion. The feminine has been relegated to silence, to the shadows, to the background. Christ, however, has always honored the feminine. He recognized intuition, acceptance, sensitive wisdom. Mary Magdalene was not merely a follower, but an initiate. The new era will bring about the return of balance between masculine and feminine, between doing and being, between action and contemplation. This balance will not merely be symbolic, it will be vibrational. It will form the basis for the new emotional and energetic architecture of humanity. The cosmic Christ is androgynously complete. He unites within himself the two poles and, therefore, is capable of generating a new reality. This new generation will not be created by ideologies but by integrated frequency. The economic paradigm will also be profoundly altered. Scarcity will cease to be a dominant structure. The new consciousness will reveal that abundance is not a resource to be contested, but a frequency to be activated. People will begin to co-create from the connection with their purpose, with their gifts, with the flow of life. Christ lived in a state of quantum abundance. He multiplied loaves, not by magic, but by alignment with the field of universal provision. The vibrational economy will replace the logic of exploitation. Exchanges will be more fluid, cooperative, synergistic. Money, or whatever comes to replace it, will be just an expression of energy in motion, no longer an instrument of control and fear. The Christ within us will also be the restorer of the relationship between matter and spirit. In politics, we will witness the collapse of leaderships based on power and manipulation. Guides will emerge, not rulers. Vibrational conductors, not authoritarian figures. True power will no longer be measured by the ability to impose, but to inspire, to elevate the collective frequency, to sustain fields of truth and transparency. Christ will be the mirror of these leaderships. Not the institutional Christ, but the living Christ, acting with justice without judgment, with authority without oppression, with compassion without condescension. The politics of the new age will be vibrational politics, where those who maintain the purest frequency will naturally be recognized as the center of gravity for collective decisions. This change will not be imposed, but will emerge as a consequence of the collapse of the old. Technology, far from being an enemy of spirituality, will be its ally, but not as a distraction or domination, rather as an extension of consciousness. Subtle technologies based on light, sound, sacred geometry, resonance, and biofrequency will replace the current aggressive and invasive systems. Crystals will be used as consciousness amplifiers. Neural interfaces will allow access to intuitive databases. The internet will evolve into a network connecting soul to soul. None of this will be fiction. It will be the natural manifestation of a civilization that recognizes that spirit is the foundation of all matter. The quantum Christ will be the archetype of the new engineering, organic, conscious, collaborative. In education, the change will be even more radical. The focus will shift from the accumulation of information to the awakening of inner wisdom. Children will be recognized as ancient souls in new bodies. Sensitivity, creativity, empathy, and multidimensional perception will be cultivated from an early age. Christ will be the inner teacher activated in each student. School will cease to be a factory of repeaters and become a sanctuary for the expansion of consciousness. Meditation, conscious breathing, music, art, connection with nature, vibrational practices, and practical spirituality will be part of the basic curriculum, not as doctrine, but as the science of presence. This is not utopia, it's evolutionary inevitability. In spirituality, we will witness the dissolution of religions as rigid structures and the birth of a unified, free, vibrational spirituality. Every human being will be a living temple. The search for God will cease to be external and become internal. There will be no more intermediaries. The Christ within each one will be the master key. The ancient sacred texts will be understood in their vibrational language, and new knowledge will emerge from pure, direct sources, connected with the source. Prayer will be replaced by conscious co-creation. Faith will be understood as active frequency, and the miracle will be recognized as the applied science of the Spirit. This new era is a collective choice, but it begins within each individual. It will not come from above, but from within. It won't be announced by trumpets, but by the silence of millions of hearts choosing truth. The new earth will be built by those who recognize the Christ within themselves and begin to live according to that frequency. It will be made of small, consistent gestures, courageous decisions, deep detachments, and reunions with the essential self. There will be no leader to follow, only the light to be awakened in each gaze. Christ will not return on clouds of glory. He is already returning in each sincere awakening, in each emotional healing, in each act of unconditional love. The union between science and spirituality will not be a forced reconciliation, but a natural revelation. Because both speak of the same thing, the structure of reality, the origin of life, the nature of being. The quantum Christ is the point where both converge. He is the Logos, the creative word. He is the field, the consciousness that sustains everything. He is the truth, the frequency that organizes. He is the way, the aligned flow. He is life, the full manifestation of light. This new era will not just be new because it is different. It will be new because it will be true, because we will finally live according to the essential nature of existence. Everything that is to come will be a direct manifestation of what we are currently vibrating. There is no fixed future, only potential futures. The frequency we emit in the present is the code that collapses the reality we experience. And the frequency of Christ is the highest code available. It is not imposed, it is accessed. It is not taught, it is remembered. And now, more than ever, humanity is being invited to remember, to leave behind the old world of separation, fear, competition, scarcity, and enter the field of unity, compassion, collaboration, vibrational abundance. The new age has already begun, and Christ is not returning. He is awakening, in you, in me, in all of us. If the quantum Christ has awakened something within you, tell me in the comments, which part of this frequency do you feel already resonates? And which one do you feel you're ready to activate now? When you share, you manifest. And when we manifest together, we elevate the entire field. Each genuine comment resonates within the collective. Each of your insights activates this new reality. Shall we co-create together this new earth? And if you felt the call, don't stop here. The next video is already on your screen. The Book of 33 Steps, The Hidden Map. Jesus left for enlightenment, a deep dive into the 33 coded steps that Christ left us for the complete awakening of the soul. It's the continuation of this journey. Click and come with me. The call continue.